Welcome to Community Watch. And today we'll be discussing psychological trauma with our special guest, Dr. Joshua Murfree. So stay tuned. Community Watch starts now.
Welcome to Community Watch. Greg, how are you?
I'm fine, brother. Yourself?
All right. Well, we're still here, which is a good thing. I hope you're being careful and taking care of yourself.
I am. I know some people with the nice weather, some people may not be taking everything serious, but I am. So I'm trying to stay in as much as possible and stay safe.
I actually am seeing quite a few people who are ignoring the recommended behaviors. So that concerns me a bit, but I am still here. I'm glad you're being careful. And I know our guest today is someone you know very well and that I've had the pleasure to meet several times. And I think today's discussion will be pretty interesting. Dr. Joshua Murfree, welcome to the show, Dr. Murfree.
Thank you very much for the opportunity.
With everything's going on with the pandemic, the coronavirus, it's easy to get caught up into that, which we should be. But other things are happening in the world that we still got to address. As the chairman of the 100 says, we're still open for business. And so therefore, the topic today is one that I think is a much needed one. Not just now, but it's much needed, and it's one we should have been having a while ago.
Well, I know that the topic that's been on your mind and a lot of people's minds recently is the shooting that occurred in Brunswick, Georgia. It's been several months now since it actually happened. And the young man, Ahmaud Arbery, was killed in that shooting. That was, I want to say February 23rd? I think that's correct.
That's correct.
And yet, a good bit of time has passed before it has become, back in the news, or developments have occurred, and a lot of people are talking about it. Greg, are you getting a lot of responses, a lot of folks talking about this in the places that you are going, virtually or otherwise?
I am, but I think I'm seeing a pattern that's disturbing. That's why I wanted Dr. Murfree to come on today to discuss this with us. I have the perception that we get mad, we get angry, we protest, we demand justice, which is all needed. But the follow-up, what comes next, and not only the follow-up, but more important for me, for the discussion today, the psychological effects this have on men of color. Because as me and you both know, working with young men of color, the way they perceive some of these things without proper context can be heartbreaking. It can be disturbing. And so going to you, Dr. Murfree, I'm really concerned about the mentality, because I know how I feel personally. I know we had a mentoring discussion about this, but I don't know as a society we understand the psychological damage and trauma seeing somebody hunted down and murdered. And this not being the first incidents, the psychological effects it has on men of color in particular.
When you start looking at things that have occurred, you mentioned, and again, thank you for the opportunity to be here this morning. When you look at what has occurred in this nation, And I often think about Emmett Till, but then I turn around and start looking at Trayvon Martin. You look at Trayvon Martin, February 26, 2012, and you go down to Michael Brown. And in the presentation, not the day that I used, February the 23rd, you were saying, Dr. Hersey, February 23rd, 2020. I mean, there is a psychological illness there, not for the people who necessarily doing it, not trying to get them out of it. But when you look at a community of young men, they're like, hey, we have to be ready. We have to be prepared. But then what is their ready and their preparedness? I often call this, if you will, it's almost like you suffer from a post-traumatic community disorder, not a stress disorder for one person, but a community disorder. When you can't jog in a community, when you can't drive in a community, when you cannot be somewhere where your children are safe or they don't feel safe, oh, it's tough. When you could have people running, you live in communities, you want to feel like I'm a part of that community. I want to feel good that I can jog outside. I don't necessarily want to go to the gym. I can't afford $40 a month. But it's happening. I don't know whether people are so mean. Some people have this hatred going on. But to see that, and at first when my wife showed it to me, I sat there and watched it. That night, it was difficult to sleep because you have feelings of sadness, you have feelings of disappointment, you have feelings of anger, you have feelings of what we do. And young men start saying, and I say young men of all colors and all races and all ages can say, oh, that shouldn't happen in America. We're supposed to be the land of the free, the home of the brave. Why is this still happening? And you can see some of the patterns of that kind of behavior. And then what makes it really tough, if you will, on some of these young people is then the law doesn't stand up. And I was ready to say, right, that bothers you psychologically to say, okay, then where do I go? If justice has its place in this country, then where do I go, Dr. Hersey? Where do I go, Gray? Where do I go, Mr. Brown? Where do I go? Because I'm your friend, you recuse yourself. You're not following the law. We voted you to be the DA in Brunswick, in Glenn County, in the Golden Isles. But you recuse yourself because someone killed someone that was your friend. No, I told some guys before and I stopped. But if I get caught and you are my friend, with a whole transfer truck full of cocaine, and you're the chief of police, I'm supposed to be arrested. I broke the law. If you break the law, you don't take the law in your own hand. You don't accuse yourself. You follow the law because you stood before the citizens of your county and you said, hey, this is what I'm going to do to protect my people. That DA can't protect me. When you have to go to Liberty County, when you're looking for a DA and all the way down to Ware County and Waycross, Georgia, you got a DA all the way up here in DeKalb County. That's ridiculous. Do your job for which the people ask you to do. That makes the whole psychology change because then people have inside of them that fear. I don't want to go. I'm already dealing with a pandemic. Don't want to go to work. I need to get out of my house some just to jog. The question you asked me, it's okay to run around. But now it's like my wife said the other day, the neighborhood we live in, she said, now, Josh, I'm not jogging again by myself. Think about that. You're not jogging by yourself. We live in a quote unquote great neighborhood. But do you live in a great neighborhood? Because that's what young people ask. The moment you feel all the money you pay for mortgage, but you don't feel safe enough to run in your own neighborhood, that's bothersome. Because psychologically, it's at the back of your mind saying, what if? What if somebody shoots me? What if somebody just say, why are you in this neighborhood? And then you turn around, I live here. But when somebody says, oh, you fussing back at me? No, I'm not fussing. I don't have a gun, you have a gun. And you go to put your hand on your hip. Well, I thought she was reaching for a gun. She's jogging. So too many excuses. Our young people should have some type of feeling about this. And I go to the trauma. Young African-American males in programs are feeling, if you will, a trauma situated with this.
You know, Doc, I was talking to a socialist of mine, Miss Tamu Douglas, and we were discussing that not only the crime itself, but how we have been so vilified, the black male body, that people can literally kill you and use the fear where I was afraid for my life, and that's enough to justify them getting off in some cases. The assassination of the black male character has been one in such that just my presence, I didn't do anything. I'm not guilty of any crime, but my presence alone, Trayvon Martin, you can say I was afraid for my life. And psychologically, I mean, we had a mentoring session this weekend, and the young man said, and I'm paraphrasing, he said, I can't control their fear of me. And that's deep. When you at 17 are wrestling with the fear of other people have of you, and knowing that fear could get you killed, but you have no control over that fear. I mean, that's a lot for anybody to have to deal with.
That's extremely tough. And that's real for them, that I have fear such that someone can get away. I just had a fear because I saw them. You know, we was talking the other day, you can be arrested driving while black, you can be arrested walking while black, jogging while black. So young people start saying and putting all this language together, though it sounds very urban, but it's real. Because everything that has occurred in this country in the last 10 years is so associated with something. I'm just kicking my wallet. Somebody says, I thought it was a gun. Well, I'm not, we've got to stop this in some kind of way. We all need to sit down at the table. We all need to sit down and have this discussion. What do we do? What do we tell young people? To have people raise their hands over their heads and say, hey, I don't have a gun. Don't shoot me over my head. Don't shoot me, please. We are missing a lot here. How do we separate all of this? And how do we come to the table as men to help young men understand life shouldn't be like this, but protect yourself in any way you can. And if you are stopped by an officer, if you stopped by someone else, turn around. Do you throw your hands up and say, hey, I haven't stolen anything. I jog here every day. I run through here every day. There's a lot I can talk about this. You treat me a different way when I play on a football team, or basketball team. When I'm just jogging through my neighborhood, trying to stay in shape, it's different. When I go to a certain school, it's okay. But then are you really doing what needs to be done? Some of these young people will have to stop and stand up too for themselves and say, if you all can't treat us any better, then we don't play sports at 8. We don't go here for beat. We don't do this. We got to be strong. The Martin Luther Kings of the day, if you have to turn to that, you have to turn and be strong. He was nonviolent, but he marched for people. And until these young people get that in their head, they're going to feel anxious. This world has to say, and that's why my head's always off to Dr. Hersh and what he's done with you all there in that area in Florida. And it's kind of like, young people, let me talk to you. Young people, let me help you. Watch this. I often tell people quickly, and I see the time, that the guy who got on the plane in Africa, I took the photo of the shot where the child was dying and the bird was waiting to devour the child after the child died. When he got to America, somebody said, what did you do? You took a photo? This is no photo art. Because I'm asking now, if I could, the guy who's coming out, he's never seen anything like that. You didn't want to run into the back of the truck. You rather take your camera. You took a video of somebody dying in the streets of the United States of America in a county which you lived in. Yes, it's impactful. Yes, it's psychological. Yes, it's disruptive. Yes, you have to adjust to that kind of behavior. When you have psychologically, that's an adjustment disorder that young people have to deal with as African Americans.
Well, we're coming up on our break here in just a few seconds, but we have a lot more discussion coming with our guest, Dr. Murfree. So please stay with us. We'll be right back after this.
Your life is filled with opportunities to show the world you can take charge. It's waking up each day with a mission. It's working each day toward a goal. It's choosing to rise. It's charging forward with a purpose. It's changing the course of your life and taking charge of your future. If you're ready to be a Take Charger, enroll at Georgia Highlands College today.
Welcome back to Community Watch. We're having a conversation with Dr. Joshua Murfree. And Dr. Murfree, you've been talking about responses to the shooting of Ahmaud Arbery in Brunswick, Georgia, back in February. Question I have, because you mentioned how an adult response, unfortunately, as it is, might be to be careful when jogging through a neighborhood. Those are the kinds of things you have to think about. But what about younger minds? And we talked a little bit about young men, late teens, 20s, college age. How do they respond to not just this story, but many other stories and the videos that are now so prevalent in these cases, and even younger than that? Children. How are they supposed to think about these incidents, and how do they put these things together?
Dr. Hershey, leaders will emerge. I can see if campuses were open, they could do it physically or in person. If high schools were open, they could do it physically or in purpose, physically or virtually. I would love to see them. You ask me what they would do. They can get together and say, look, being careful is more than just being careful. It's like have a watchful eye. Be smart, be intelligent. If you think something like this is gonna happen to you, you just can't predict when you're gonna get shot or killed or death is upon you. But think before you act. I tell people all of the time, we got to get these young people not just listening to someone their age with their ears because it's going to go here too fast. And that's for adults as well. We listen with our ears to go to our head, then it's gone. But they got to learn how to listen with their entire body. If you listen with your entire body to your heart, and some of it makes sense. Because these young people, they need that kind of help. You and I would say, well, I won't jog in that same neighborhood in Brunswick, Georgia. Probably people won't jog in that same neighborhood, close to that neighborhood in Brunswick, Georgia, or anywhere. So these young people have to really pull it together and come together and say, hey, let's be about ourselves. I'm not talking about a revolution. I'm talking about a revolution of thinkers who would say, since no one can protect us, not even the law. Not even the law, and that's why I hesitated. They need to protect themselves. They need to think about what's the best way to deal with something like this. And then they might need support groups. I would say we talk about mentoring, Gregory, but they need support groups. How do I deal with this as a standpoint as an African American? We've been seeing it over the history of time. That's why I started with Emmett Till. It's something minute ends up with death. How do we deal with this now in 2020 when a nation should be stronger, when a nation should be coming together? We've got to come together and do some things for ourselves. We've got to wrap ourselves around this, regardless of what the pandemic. We call this whole COVID-19 coronavirus a pandemic, but the murdering of young people like they're doing on the street, African-American males, that's a pandemic. That's not just an epidemic, it's happening. Some are everywhere. It happened in Texas, then it happened in Kentucky, then it happened in Oklahoma, then it happened in Miami, then it's happening closer right here in Brunswick, Georgia, Jacksonville, Florida, Savannah, Georgia. So it keeps happening over and over again. And at the end of a presentation, I've done similar. And I said that, who's next? And who's next? This guy pops up in Brunswick, Georgia. Because it's like, it's happening. And now I'm starting looking at the trends, Dr. Hershey, as a researcher. February 26th, February 23rd, 8 years apart. Then you start looking at August, you start looking at December and November, and then March. Like, is it a plan somewhere somebody's sending signals, say, this is what you do? It's almost like it's premeditated. That's why young people need to pull it together and say, how can we change some of this? How can we show people that we're not who you think we are? We are here too. We want a great education, want to go to great schools and so forth and so on. And I go back to that again. I'm an athlete, been an athletic director. But why do we keep giving our talents away when we don't have people anywhere?
Doc, you bring up some very great points that I know we can take with us. But one thing that is heavy on my heart, and as a older person, older than some of the people that are dying, I feel like we have a responsibility. And what I mean by this is that through our networks and our connections, we know people. We know DAs, we know local officials, we know elected officials, And at some point, when we no longer feel like the police and the justice system will defend us and fight for us, I can't help but feel like, hey, we have to do something. We just cannot accept this. Provide the support necessary for our young people, provide the training, but at the same time, I think we sometimes forget how we was able to get these jobs that we have in the homes that we live in. We forgot that somebody paid a price for that. It was paid forward for us hundreds of years over. And I think I can't help but feel like some of us, we have become so complacent and we really don't want to pay it forward. We don't want to risk anything. We'll talk about it, but clearly there has to be a law change. We have to address this citizen arrest piece. We have to address some of these laws that are archaic. And we've worked hard to get all these degrees and get all this social status, but if we can't turn that into relevant currency to protect our children, then what's the value of any of that?
Yeah, that's a great point. And I was about to say, when you start looking at who you put in seats, who you vote for. You know, I know something happened one time, and it happened to a school, and I went to see some guys, but I say, when you came to my house with your children on a Sunday and interrupted my meal, you said you would be this kind of guy if you became the mayor, the governor, or superintendent, whatever the case is. I'm going to hold you accountable and see. Whether you don't know, hey, the vote is a private vote. You don't know whether I voted with you or not. But one thing you know is I'm a taxpaying citizen. So therefore, we've got to do some of those things to get the policy changed. But we can't sit on the couches and complain. We can't sit there and complain that we need to make change and not do anything. We can't go there and say, well, we'll go and take the photo. These photo shoots, it's over. It ain't time to go get a photo. You got to get people involved. I know I talked about you, Greg, and Dr. Hershey coming up. Hershey's always been involved. And I use him as an example, not because he's here, but if you'd have been on the air without him this morning, just mention his name, you got to go to people like that who's been about it, who's talked about it, who's continuing to say, let's make a difference. Don't sit on the couch and give me a lot of talk and say, well, I'll go down there and I'll do a photo shoot because somebody's coming through that's supposed to be important. No, I voted for you. You got into this position that you're in. Now it's time to pay. We got to stop tolerating things. And secondly, we got to hold people accountable who we vote for. We've got to do that. And we got to ask the kind of questions. Don't just sit back and say, my vote doesn't count. Yes, it does. Your vote counts, and it counts more when you don't vote. So you have to go in and have that conversation and say, look, are you really going to be like this? I have it's a blessing from God above. I have very few bills that come in my mailbox. My mailbox is filled every day with somebody trying to run for something. I want to go to every one of those meetings they have virtual, whatever, and ask the question, I got all of this. Are you going to be everything on this that you have tagged down in here? I'm going to be honest. I'm going to be this. I'm about integrity. I'm about empathy. You get in there, can't even find me. Go by your office. You're too important. Somebody tells you, I can't see you. Now you're busy. You sitting there drinking coffee. You ain't that busy. So I'm telling you, until we step up and get up, kind of like what you're saying, it will remain the same. But in order to get a change, we got to change some of the policies in this country so it will happen for young men and young women. But we've got to go there and do it. We can't sit back when we see something. If you see something wrong, say something about it. And I know as we get pressed for time, there is a piece that I always tell people about, and there's a piece from Dr. King. And he used to say that in the end, it will not, you always remember not the words of your enemies, but the silence of your friends. Some people say, man, I'm your friend, but you ain't say anything. You took a photo. You saw me getting hurt, but you took a photo. You could have raised your voice. You can raise your voice. You can cheer at a football game or basketball game and everything else. But when it comes to the betterment of human beings, you didn't say one thing. You never went down to the Dome in Atlanta, brought anything up. You got senators, you got congressmen, you got mayors, you got city councilmen. You never go to a city council meeting, bring anything up, but you sit back and complain with the boys in the parking lot. That's not going to do it anymore. You got to go in and be about the business. And once I teach you how to go to those city council meetings, then it's kind of like we mentor young people to do certain things. You say, well, how did this society of people move from A to B? It's because they're being taught A, B, C, D, right through the alphabet. I apologize for being long on that one, but you kind of touched the nerve.
No, that's why you on here. But I know we are getting close to our time, but I just know I don't know how we do it, Dr. Hershey. Uh, but the psychological damage, because I think a lot of times we recognize trauma from veterans who are returning from war,
Mm-hmm.
but we seem to dismiss that young people of color, especially when they are seeing violence not just perpetrated by other people, but within their own community as well, that type of trauma and how it affects them. And I think we take mental health, we don't take it seriously enough, I think, in America. But I know as a Black man, we kind of have this macho thing about getting help and mental health, but we got to start addressing somehow the mental health of our community and of our young people, especially under the times that they're living now.
That's a great point, but you want her to handle, but let me do that. I just did a piece down in Lowndes County the other day on mental health and mental illness. Mental health is just like physical health. Mental health is like, how you doing? Are you okay today as you were yesterday? But the concept is a whole piece of mental illness. Mental illness, when you're dealing with a mood or thought disorder that which significantly impacts your whole thought of how you work, how do you handle life. But the key point is what you said. If you see somebody in a situation who might need mental health, because when you see trauma after trauma after trauma, just like a Vietnam veteran, average age of a Vietnam vet was 19, but guess what? When they came home, they suffered from something called PTSD. It's taken 10 years ago for them to even get funds for that through the government. But even now, young people are seeing trauma, death, mothers killed, sisters killed, brothers killed, run. You just think about the young people that knew Aubrey down there. It's a post-traumatic stress disorder. Psychologically, oh no, I'm not jogging. Psychologically, I'm not going out by myself. Psychologically, I'm not going to do something in the dark. Psychologically, I don't feel good about going to school. People can't protect me. Psychologically, I don't even feel good about going to church. Look what happened in Charleston, South Carolina. So there are psychological barriers about all of this. It's called a post-traumatic stress disorder or some type of behavior, I would say, adjustment to what's going on. And it's tough for young people to deal with that. But you need to have, if you can't handle it, yes, you need to go see a professional. And I'm going to go this way and I'm going to go quickly. Pastors are even saying, there were a whole host of pastors when I did faith-based last week, and they clapped when I said, don't always run to your pastor for everything that you're dealing with because that person might not be certified. You need to go to a certified therapist, a certified counselor, a certified psychiatrist, to have psychologists to have these discussions so they'll get a better understanding and you'll get a better understanding of what you're going through. But it's real out here. I call it a post-traumatic stress community, a post-traumatic stress disorder. It's tough when young people see death time and time again. And the sad part about it, the deaths are more consistent than us going out and getting services. And there are communities and there are towns where there are limitations of people who are providing professional services.
Well, Dr. Murfree, we're about out of time here. I want to thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us. And it's a serious issue. I hope you'll come back again soon.
Sir, thank you all very much for your time.
And thank you all for being with us on Community Watch. We'll see you next time.